Hello, and welcome to the SME Focus show powered by MTDCNC. I'm Mark Weymouth from the Sensor Specialist Plus Automation. This podcast aims to highlight aspects of the UK manufacturing or topics of interest to SMEs. And therefore, today my guest is Jack Hand, Managing Director of the large format robotic 3D printing business Rapid Fusion, the Plus 3D integrators Evo 3D, and the marketing company Evo Media. Hi, Jake. Welcome to SME Focus.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, after some technical gremlins, it truly is a pleasure to see you and have you on. So thanks for being with us.
Yeah, it was a little bit tedious, but we got there in the end. So
we got there. It'll be worth it, I'm sure. So I'll kick off by making mention that the SME Focus show talks many episodes about apprenticeships. So really, I want to just shout and celebrate the fact that you started out as an apprentice with DSG Defence Support Group. So you mentioned that you were working with bomb disposal robots. So I'm hoping you're going to tell us a little bit more about that. But before I do, I try and give a time or musical time reference to things. So you started your apprenticeship in September 2002. And the musical reference point for that, the highlight of that was Atomic Kitten, The Tide is High. So we'll quickly move past Atomic Kitten.
The tide is high, yeah.
God. It's an earworm. We can all picture it now. We can all hear
it. Yeah, definitely.
Moving past Atomic Kitten, can I ask you then a more serious question? Why did you choose to study electrical and electronic engineering as part of your apprenticeship? And tell us a little bit about your apprenticeship, the route, how you found it, and maybe your thoughts on apprenticeships then and now.
Yeah, so I always planned to do an apprenticeship when I left school. So I started applying. Yeah. You actually had to apply while you were still at school. So I was sitting my GCSEs and there was a requirement in terms of qualifications. So you're hoping that you get them before, you get through to these stages in the interview process for an apprenticeship. And it all pins on you getting your qualifications, which luckily I did. But I was originally wanted to be I knew I wanted to do engineering. My first love was probably automotive engineering. I applied and I got accepted into quite a few places. So I think Mercedes, Aston Martin and various others. But the DSG, as it's known now, was the MOD, and the MOD was transitioning to being more privatized, right? So they're being brutally honest. It wasn't. I went through the aptitude test and did all of I think you do a 3-day test in there, and it was 800 applicants or so, and I got whittled down to the last 22 and offered what they felt was, based on my tests that I did, was the right job for me to be doing. So they felt like I was more I guess going to be more skilled as an electrical electronic engineer. My maths was very strong, so I think that's a prerequisite for that. So they offered it me, and the money was better than the others. And at 16, I was like, I think I'll take they're paying like £40 a week elsewhere, and it was like £120 a week at the MOD, and I was like, that sounds like a no-brainer. It's a month's worth of wages nearly for a week. So but yeah, and how did I find it? It was great. I mean, the training was second to none. We had a year in a training wing, so they don't even put you to work to start with. They actually, very fortunate, they put us into a training wing, and we got a whole year of learning all sorts of different skills, from machining to metalwork through to soldering and all of that sort of all the testing that you need to know and understand. And then you're sort of unleashed onto the shop floor, and you kind of hope that you're safe and you know what you're doing enough to not get in the way. And then the career there progressed, and when I obviously finished up at my time there, I was in the bomb disposal team working there. I really enjoyed it. I was building and repairing they call them wheelbarrows in the military. And it was great because it was a little bit mechanical as well as electrical and electronics. So I was getting to, it's a robot at the end of the day, so there's moving parts. So it was quite a nice balance for me. And I can't not, I think apprenticeships are really valuable. I do agree with you, the sentiment that we should champion them. Really, they're a great way of taking somebody who maybe would have gone, what route would I have taken? Go to college and maybe go to uni and then try and figure out engineering. Well, by the time I'd have qualified at uni, I'd have had no practical experience really. So, when I was going to university towards the end and studying alongside some of the other people, it's like I've already got four years under my belt actually doing engineering, which is really key to learning the trade really. So I don't think there's any right or wrong way of doing it, but I do think if you want to get hands-on early on and understand more, an apprenticeship seems like an advanced engineering apprenticeship still should be a really valuable route to get into that point where you can then sort of flee the nest a little bit and do your own thing in engineering world. So but yeah, I found it very, very good, very useful. There's still a lot of the knowledge I built up is still within me, and obviously it's helped me further on in my endeavours.
Yeah, I came the traditional route through education, but I think there's an awful lot to be said for the more route. We shouldn't just have one, and we still seem to favour just this education route in. I think that's a real big mistake. You should have your different routes, and I can fully sympathise with that logic of I hated education by the time I went through it in sufferance. I'd have been much happier being far more hands-on and then understanding why I needed to be educated rather than being educated for a load of time before you're even allowed to be hands-on. It seems a perverse world where we only seem to favour one route and the other route sort of considered secondary. I think they both should be encouraged and a lot more money put into apprenticeships than there is.
I think there was a lack of I actually seeked out, my mum was helpful. She pushed me to apply. The story is I wrote handwritten letters to addresses in the Yellow Pages. Genuinely, this is how I went about it. As mad as that might sound now, but it was pull the Yellow Pages out. Who are the engineering companies in the locality? And you're going to write a letter, and you're going to do them by hand, and we're going to post them off. And I think we sent 20 odd letters, and out of that, we actually did get replies and come along to this day, but I think given the age of technology that we have now and information, it still feels like not enough out there around apprenticeships. Like it doesn't, it's not an easy thing to seek out and find. So the school wasn't particularly great at recommending routes for that. It was very much go and do, your I guess your A levels, go sixth form, do A levels, and then look at. And I think that's just, maybe it's got better. I'm old now, so it might have changed a little bit. But definitely at the time, it was a bit of a weird route to go down. I knew people doing plumbing or trades where there were, you naturally go and work on the job and you do a day at college. But in terms of engineering, it was a real weird route to go down to get into engineering was an apprenticeship, which seems crazy really, but that's kind of how I found it.
I think we underestimate how much time children spend with teachers, and teachers offer advice, and of course teachers only know the academic route. For them, sixth form's not scary because that's the world they lived. University was the best years of their life probably, so hey, guess what they recommend people to do.
You talk from experience, don't you? So it's definitely that route that they recommend for sure.
Okay, so having talked the virtues of electronic engineering and getting hands-on and working with bomb disposal robots, you quickly turned your back on all of that and moved across, possibly following the money again, moving across to the commercial world. I noticed selling mobile phones for 4 years, which I guess at that point was really exciting where the money was. Then working for IT equipment distribution for 5 years, computer hardware for another 3 years. So what prompted the switch away from engineering to the commercial world?
So when I started to look at jobs in engineering after I left the MOD, I really looked around and thought, well, actually, my skill set, I've been trained in very specific equipment, and a lot of that is repair and overhaul. If you look at electronics in general, we're probably getting better now as a society, but there wasn't a lot of opportunities to sort of transfer over to, I guess, real civilian jobs, if that makes sense. Although I was a civilian working, it's a different world. You're working on military equipment. They have their own processes. It's very much, military based organization. So moving over felt like I was applying for jobs, and actually when I was applying, it was like a little bit of a backward step. Everything seemed to be a rung down from what I just qualified and what I was experienced in. And I actually felt like it'd be nice to experience something different. So I'd really been doing engineering for quite a while, and I'd left school and gone full bore into a career in that. And I felt like I had, I wanted to take a bit of a breather and actually do something that was a little bit completely different, but was talking to people. So initially I thought, what can I do where I actually chat to people most days? And weirdly, I walked down a high street. As with many things, I walked down a high street where I lived with a CV, and I went into places, and I just wanted a job, something. It didn't matter what the pay was, and I was getting knockbacks because they were like, "Wait a minute, you've just qualified at you've got this experience. Why do you want to work here? Doesn't make any sense." Yeah. So, but then I went into this phone store, and they were like, he had a look, he laughed at the CV, and was like, come and have a chat. So we had a chat, and he interviewed me there and then, and obviously offered me the job. And it was very much a lucrative industry then. Like you could, the money was pretty big. I was earning quite a lot of money relatively easily because it was a boom of mobile phones. The contracts were quite expensive then. They weren't trying to give away a £1,000 device, so it was a lot more profit in it. So I sort of stayed there, and I loved it. I enjoyed it. I still think to this day it's probably one of the most enjoyable jobs I ever did. Because it was just it's quite carefree, and as long as you were doing your job every day, you'd have a laugh. And I was in the town centre, and it was sunny days. You could go and sit outside, or you go for a beer after work, and it was a very carefree lifestyle. So I enjoyed that, and that built me the basis of kind of understanding interactions and how they work, and how people maybe pivot, and how decisions are made. So that sales element was kind of coming into its own. And then then I went into the next thing. Was I had a son that was coming, and I thought I need to maybe go a bit more serious in my career and start building a career again. And I guess going from sort of treading water and enjoying this lifestyle to, right, okay, I'm now going to go and do something serious. So I went into IT distribution, where I learned the commercial world of how products are manufactured and then sold into the industries that they target. So everything B2B, from that lifestyle, B2B, and it was a big transition. So B2B, and I had to work really, really hard in that job because it was a very cutthroat job. So I was definitely, going in early and leaving the latest, coming in first and leaving last, and sitting and researching and understanding, how do I get ahead here? How do I work out how this works? So poured 5 years into that, and then went on to work for a manufacturer of components. So I was actually getting a bit of a name. People wanted to work with me, and I managed to get a really good job working at a manufacturer where I did well there as well, and got paid very well, and then was able to kind of leave there with enough backing, I guess, to start my first business. So it's been a roller coaster really up until that point.
Okay. So perfect segue for the real reason that you're on today is to talk about those businesses. So we're in 2017. You've made a big jump from, or you've had this idea of making the jump from having a wage, working somewhere you're sort of well established and you've got a reputation. So first of all, I guess, what brought around the focus of 3D printing? Where did you come across 3D printing, and what attracted you to it?
So I think it's worth explaining. So initially, I'm working at a manufacturer and growing their business, and then I kind of decide, wait a minute, I could build a company that does this on behalf of manufacturers. So an agency model. So I launched that in 2017, and it was from that, the success of that I met other people. And obviously in that time I met a guy, Martin Jewell, who's our CTO now. I met him, and he was selling 3D printers, and it was like a bit of a weird world. It's like, can you help me sell more printers? I was like, well, probably. We need to have a look at how this works. Like, how does this market tick, and what's the technology? And I was completely, I knew about 3D printers. I understood a little bit about how they work, but I didn't realize how much they were being utilized now in industry. I've got that massive gap out of the shop floor, and I kind of never see what they're using. And then all of a sudden, he introduced me to it, and we hit it off. We got on really well, and we started to realize, wait a minute, there's a real opportunity here in 3D printing. And we specifically were targeting sort of very large printers, right? Large format printers as a growth market. So while people were buying lots of small desktop printers, and you had the likes of Ultimaker who were doing really well, and all these brands, and they were quite established, I thought, well, we're not really going to get a foothold there because that's already kind of happened. And we went down the route of very industrial, big, large printing. If you want to print large, you talk to Evo 3D. So we founded Evo 3D in 2021. And it was, very successful pretty quickly, really, if I'm honest. It's done very well. Because it was this niche that we carved out. So you've got additive manufacturing as a wider market, and there's lots of different technologies in that market. My sort of knowledge that I'd gained over all these years in commercial world was, well, you have to be known for something, you have to be good in one lane, and that builds a really good foundation to grow. If you kind of stretch it and try and be everything to everyone, you're sort of nothing to anyone really after a while, because you're not really the leader in that area. So we had a really core plan of what we wanted to achieve with Evo 3D, and that plan was to be the go-to place to talk to for large printing. And so our sort of business model was to target brands that maybe weren't as well known in the market, and that maybe not even in the UK at the time. And most of the ones we've worked with now that are largest brands, they weren't even in the UK market when we started. So actually taking their products, bringing them into the UK, being the exclusive partner for them to resell their products, which means your margin strategies, taken care of, because you've got more margin to play with. You're not competing with yourself or someone down the road. You've got your own, you can control your own price structure, your channel, and you can offer really good service and be experts on that brand. And so that's what we've done. And I think that model is something I took from being in distribution IT, where they would do the same. They would sign a brand exclusively, and they would have more margin in it so they could do a better job with it. And so it was really rinse and repeat of things I'd already learned, but we managed to build a really good foothold. And actually having brands that are exclusive to us means that when we talk to customers, if they want to buy that type of product, i.e. they want to print big, they've got to come to us to do that, realistically. So it's opened up doors with many, many big tier 1 manufacturers in the UK, names that when I was starting out would have been amazing to think we'd be selling to and dealing with and working with. We're now actually dealing with and working with. So I think being careful with what you sell and building the right partnerships is really key for success in any industry, really. So that's a little bit about that, I think.
So when we're talking big, can you give, I guess, some idea of size, or maybe give some idea of the typical parts or the typical solutions that are printed, and maybe explain how the two businesses work together?
Yeah, so I can talk, for sure. So Evo 3D specialized for a long time in large FDM printers, so filament-based printers. You put a roll of filament in the side, and what we class as large is anything sort of around the meter cubed size, so 1 meter square. And realistically, we sell probably the most of those in the market by quite a bit now. But what people print with that is anything from model making, so printing stuff to go out on displays, theme parks, whatever it might be, or branding, POS for outside stores or displays or whatever it might be. From that to automotive parts, to panels, to prototyping, to plastics that go into cars, trays, jigs, fixtures. There's so many different applications. And the industries we typically work with are those sort of model makers is one that everyone kind of familiar with, but most of our business comes from automotive and engineering. If you're manufacturing something, having the ability to print something large will give you lots more applications for the technology. So where they were very, very sort of proficient in printing small, that all they've got is they've jumped up to this bigger size, and all of a sudden the brain opens up and goes, well, actually, why don't we prototype that panel in this? Or we can make a mold for that. We can print that mold and make a prototype really quickly. So this is speeding up the way that people are reiterating designs and producing products. So yeah, and then we kind of, I was flying back from Glasgow. I was in Glasgow airport of all places, and I decided that it'd be really good to go to print with robots. I thought this was like an area that seemed like was kind of struggling a little bit in terms of competitors in the market, but also people making it simple. And so I looked around, and there was a couple of brands that we now know quite well, but I decided, right, this is something we're going to do. So I think within a week we had a robot in the building delivered. And then within sort of a month or so, we were printing on a robot. And then that's kind of, then we applied for some funding, which I'll go into.
Can I maybe ask,
I think,
could you just explain maybe to people who aren't so familiar with 3D printing, how you're sort of going from the XY linear actuators to a robot, or what do you mean by printing with a robot?
So a robot, so you've got a six axis robot, or so basically it can move in multiple dimensions. It can sort of turn its head. I'm doing my robot impression for anyone who's watching this. And the idea being is it opens up a load of hosts of geometries that you wouldn't be able to achieve being in a kind of linear motion system where you're kind of back and forth and up and down. So this gives you non-planar capabilities, which means you can print very nice shapes without having to worry about the restrictions of being on rails effectively. But it also means you can scale up your printing to much, much bigger. So we're talking meter cubed, but we're now printing, we can go as long and as big as you want, really, with a robot and a rail system. So we're printing, majority of the stuff we do is, a couple of meters by 3 meters, or whatever it might be, depending on what it is. And with adding that technology into our sort of portfolio, we've now unlocked things like marine sector, where you're able to, print boat hulls, molds for boats. There's been various different projects that we've worked on. Our strongest projects are probably concrete molds, marine sector, and then really mold making in general. So all sorts of weird and wacky things. I won't give away customer names or details, but we get a whole host of projects come through. So we kind of conceptualized this idea, and Evo 3D originally was buying parts from other manufacturers and bolting them together and setting up a system. And then Rapid Fusion was born out of that, really. So we decided, well, wait a minute, we can make our own systems, design them in-house, manufacture them, and sell our own kit and have our own technology that we've developed. So we sort of, Rapid Fusion was born within the group. So you've got Evo 3D, that is our service-led distributor and reseller, and really offers the whole host of services to anyone who wants to adopt additive manufacturing. And within that team, vastly technical team, lots of engineers. We're very engineering heavy in the team. And then you've got Rapid Fusion, which is, again, very engineering heavy. It's an R&D team, effectively, that are building and developing our own products that we then take to market. And Evo 3D is a reseller of our products. So you've got this nice, they kind of complement each other nicely. But really, Rapid Fusion is an OEM. It's a manufacturer of products. So it's slightly different type of business model. But it's really, where we can kind of innovate and grow our offering, if you like, to the market, and becoming a manufacturer ourselves.
Okay. With a lot of the audience of this show being sort of SMEs and therefore probably smaller scale manufacturers, how would you pitch your sort of service to them? Because I guess a lot of the audience see 3D printing as maybe a 300 mil by 300 mil cube, and perhaps don't think beyond that. So how would you envisage sort of SMEs? I mean, do you have SMEs who work with you maybe on very low run things? I can't think of an example. Could you help me out? Think of examples where you might work with
of course.
manufacturing
I
SMEs.
Mean, so I mean, typically how it starts is someone's bought a small printer and they've put it in the back of the workshop and they've printed a few, and it's usually to be fair, someone younger who's come in, who's maybe used them at college or university, or maybe had one at home. And the journey starts with that. And then that guy goes, well, I can print you a bracket breaks, or a tool needs mounting slightly differently or something, they need a widget for a job.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden someone draws one up in CAD and prints it off. And then the management go, wait a minute, it's actually really useful. How do we utilize this? And so the journey begins. So we work from people who have never printed before at all to large scale manufacturers who want to have a full suite of products and technologies to be able to adapt for different parts that they're creating. But how you need to look at it is we say this now, it's become a thing, is we're not selling machines, we're selling parts. You're buying these machines to produce parts. So if you're someone who's not really sure whether it's you want to invest in equipment, then maybe you'll just have parts printed, and actually there's a cost saving or a time saving, which equals cost as well, right? Or there's flexibility in how you work, right? So you can create more designs for a client, or you can move a bit quicker, you can make it a bit cheaper for them. So it's really the aim of Evo 3D is to ingrain itself in that journey with your business, and obviously offer you the advice and expertise to help you get on that journey of understanding the real capabilities of how additive manufacturing can replace things that you buy currently, or improve processes you already have, or create parts for less money than what you pay currently. So and then all the way through to designing and your whole setup. So it might be that you need a printer, but you also might need some form of post-processing on those parts, or you want to paint them, or whatever it might be. We can come in and look at, what we do is we do a lot of AM audits, we call them. Like, you walk into someone's business and you look at their traditional methods of manufacturing and offer suggestions on where additive might be able to benefit them. And that's I would recommend that. If someone's never really gone down this route, or they're really at the very beginning of it, book a consultation with the team, and they'll be able to guide you from where you are now to where you get the benefit of the technology. And most people are looking at it or have already dabbled in it. We're not back 10 years ago where it was like no one had a printer. I think they're very much available now and in the market. And, there's a lot of products available for not a lot of money that get you up and running with producing parts. So yeah, I don't know if that kind of answers the question, but I think for SMEs, they're looking at stability in their processes as well. So having that support and resource to help them make that investment, but then support them on that journey is key. Anyone can sell you a product. Anyone can shift you a box into your building, but if you're not trained on how to utilize it, we offer training as well, and you're not guided on the best way to get the most out of it and design your parts correctly to get the most out of it, that box will sit there and it won't make you any money. It'll collect dust. So it's really, that's the key part, is we offer solutions and we democratize 3D printing so that it's easy for everyone to utilize it.
Okay. Is there anywhere people should go or could go to that gives, I guess maybe I'm thinking the more basic information or the inspiration to have the thought of, okay, well, I can see that bit of the factory that we could rework. That seeding the ideas to people, really. Are there any good sources of information?
Yeah, I think what you'll find is we put a lot of case studies on our site. Okay. So Evo 3D is a good site to go to if you want to have a look at some case studies where people have utilized. The case studies are usually organized in industry specific. So if you're a particular industry, you might find one in there where there's a really good use case for additive. YouTube is a fantastic source of information. I'm sure anyone who would watch this or listen to this has got access to YouTube. So yeah, looking at, okay, additive manufacturing, in general, I think there's probably videos and resource that you can look at that will give you inspiration on how you can utilize it.
If you were typing a search term into YouTube, what would you type in? Because obviously that's a hell of a rabbit's warren to go down looking for additive manufacturing.
Yeah, of
so
course.
if you were trying to look at the right sort of thing, what words would you type into YouTube?
I think it depends on where you are in the journey and what your background is.
I'm really talking about early days, people trying to
just
get a bit of inspiration.
3D, just 3D printing. 3D printing for engineering, or 3D printing designs, or there'll be a whole host of stuff there. I mean, for me, it's so wide and vast, like the scope of what you can do with 3D printing. I'd look at, like, if I was a motorcycle company, right, I'd look at 3D printing parts for motorcycles, and you'll find a whole host of videos for that. So try and pick an industry that's relevant to you. If you're a mold maker and you make those molds by hand at the moment, you can Google or go on YouTube and do 3D printed molds, carbon fiber 3D printed molds. There's loads of resource and videos on there that are really, really cool, that will open your mind up to a whole world of possibilities. That process that took you days of hand making and modeling could probably be cut down to a number of hours, and then you got that scope to be doing more things within your business and open up more production capabilities, etc. So it's a really, not to be wishy-washy on the answer, Mark, but it's a really tricky one to answer, because it depends on where your background is, I guess.
I think you've given a good answer, actually, by don't just look at 3D printing, because goodness knows what will come up. Look at 3D printing and a word that so your industry or your product, or narrow it down by that. And then if your example of, if you make parts for motorcycles and you're suddenly being shown a whole load of information about 3D printing for motorcycles, you already understand 50% of what they're telling you, so you can then understand the 50% new, as opposed to watching a lot of videos on how to print 3-dimensional tug models is no use to most of this audience.
The little boat that they will print, it's probably not going to help you that much. You will print one though, for sure. It will happen. But
excellent. So now, I think that was good advice. I mean, is there any other nuggets of advice you'd offer for people, SMEs, maybe SMEs who have done some 3D printing, but maybe it's fallen out of favor? Maybe they were a bit more involved 5-10 years ago when things were harder. What would you say to them now?
I'd say the technology's moved on a lot. So the scope, it's crazy actually how much it's moved on in the last few years. As painful as it is, if you haven't got a machine currently, or you've got a very old one, I would suggest going out and buying a brand we don't sell. This is how authentic it is. But Bamboo do a fantastic printer for very little money. Very attainable for most businesses, especially SMEs. Buy one of those machines and sort of refamiliarize yourself with how you print, because people are getting parts that would have taken days before, often hours. They're that fast now, and the finish is really, really fantastic. So you've got parts that look like they were injection molded at very little money, very quickly, and at a touch of a button in your workshop. If that's not useful to your business, then maybe you're not an engineering company. But if you're an engineering company, I think there's not many out there that won't find that useful. And also, even if you're, for example, we've got a friend of mine owns a cake shop. She makes cookies. The amount of cookie cutters that I've had to print for different shapes for different customers, and that's made her business really unique. She's got options that she couldn't have before. So there's it's weird and wacky as it is, but I think my advice would be to really try and get hold of some equipment. If your budget's small, start small and get proficient and learn, because it isn't going anywhere. It's not going to disappear. I think you'll find that your competitors may be using it. So it's well worth learning again, and take your time. There's no rush. Just learn.
I think it's interesting what you say about get a new piece of equipment, because it was like all new things, it was full of teething problems and difficulties, and I'm sure nearly all of those have been ironed out. So yeah, it's just
It's
so much simpler
unbelievable.
to do now.
Oh, mate, they're fantastic. I mean, the functionality and the automations that they have in them. You don't need to know a lot to print. You know, where your knowledge will come in is designing for printing. But if you've got a file that you can find, and there's Thingiverse, there's makers sites, there's all these different sites where you can go on, and just Google. I need a cup holder for my car, or I need this, and there'll be something available to print. A lot of the time, the files are free, so there's no real barrier to entry now, like there was probably a while ago, in terms of like you'd have to build the printer yourself, and all of that stops now. So I think it's a much more attainable piece of kit to have and to utilize to its potential. So yeah, and they're ridiculously quick and easy to use.
Okay, so moving away from kit and physical parts,
Yes.
another aspect of your business is Evolution Media, so a marketing company. So can you tell us a little bit about how that came about, how it fits within the overall group, and what it does, please?
Yeah, Evolution Media is a fantastic agency, actually, that I'm very proud of. We built that. That was the first business that we had. So what happened was we set up to be a sales consultancy business, and we were doing a really good job with, you know, selling these brands. So as I said, through Cash Your Mind Back, worked at a manufacturer of IT products. It's Corsair as a company, and they're a pretty well-known brand now in the market. But we kind of gained this knowledge, and then basically went freelance and started an agency, me and Martin Wood, who's one of the founders. And we were doing great on the sales. You know, we'd take brands from Silicon Valley and we'd sell them into Europe, but we didn't have a marketing arm to that business. So we quickly decided to hire and start building a marketing team. And fast forward to where we are now, you know, I no longer do that consultancy and sales and all of that stuff for that business. The business has changed or evolved, as we like to coin, because it's topical, right? It's evolved into a marketing agency, and a really good marketing agency with very talented people within the business who really get how to grow brands and how to grow businesses. And that's been invaluable, having that business while launching other businesses. Because you think of the reach that we've got from day one when we launched. You know, Evo 3D was growing grew really quickly, but it wasn't just because it was like luck. It was a lot of knowledge behind how you actually market the business, and marketing is a really key element to any business. If you're sat there now in your business and thinking, how do I get ahead here? How do I, you know, my bills are racking up and my money's coming down and revenue's dropping. And unfortunately, that is a real reality for a lot of business owners currently. I'd really look at how your outreach is done and how you're going after new business, because that is the only bit that's going to transform your situation. Reality is, you know, working in you sort of, we put blinkers on sometimes and keep working and try and think if we work harder, we'll make more money. Reality is you probably won't make more money. You need new clients and new bloods and new fresh people coming through the door. So that is marketing that generates that. And word of mouth used to work, but that's now really hard to do in a very saturated land space where there's lots of people doing the same thing as you and have access to the internet. So I'm not pitching the agency, but I would say my advice would be, if you aren't using the full might of what you could be for marketing, is maybe have a look at your outreach. Can you, as a business owner, you know, spend more time in a day reaching out and messaging directly to other businesses through LinkedIn, or, you know, putting yourself out there on platforms like this, or talking more openly on your socials? It doesn't cost you anything. It's just your time. Actually, you only need that one or two clients to pop up that maybe we're thinking about doing what you're offering, and all of a sudden your numbers are slightly better and you're starting to feel like you're coming out of those weeds. So yeah, for us it's been amazing. You know, we have the fortunate, you know, we're very fortunate that we turn on a tap and we have more business come through. And it doesn't mean that you close all that business or it all gets, all works out. It just means we don't have to worry about that element of it, which is great for us. So been invaluable. I've loved it. It's real. It kind of, I love it to bits. I think it's a great business. I like seeing the transformation that we achieve through that business in other people's businesses. Nothing better than, I'll give you an example very quickly, but there's a business next door that the guy was outside. I won't name names because it's probably not right to do that. Although you could probably Google where it is, somewhere here. I won't say where. And he was having a bad day, and I think realistically he was struggling with his business. And he was like, "I'm not getting any leads. I'm really struggling." And I said, "Well, why don't we have a chat?" And his budget was small, and the team put together a plan. He's now got 400 leads that he's working through. So 3 months down the line, his business has completely changed directory, and he's so much happier. And you can see it when I talk to him. He's like, things are going in the right direction. And I think it's amazing when that happens. That's one thing I love about that business, is it can do that for people. So yeah, it's nice to see when you kind of take that stress away from him. Where's the next invoice that I can send out to, or customer to invoice. And actually, now he's got a plethora of people. He's working out how he keeps up with it all. So it's nice.
Okay. So a little change of tack. I heard somebody on the radio today say, they didn't really rate much about AI because AI isn't doing the washing up any easier, or what isn't really doing the laundry easier. AI is just doing the fun things. But I'm going to ask you, AI is obviously constantly a topic in the media and very much a part of machinery and a big topic within media. So how is AI being utilized? How is AI being utilized in your businesses, and what thoughts do you have on AI?
So we've really taken to AI straight away. I think it was good. You'll always get some sort of champions of it within any business. It's like not everyone loves it. Some people aren't turning it on or even using it at all still within the business. And we're not forcing it upon people, and we're not trying to replace tasks with it. Where I see it being really useful is being able to take an idea and scope that out faster. Basically build a business case or a model around we can sit in a room now, talk about an idea, and then quickly have it run some projections and work out some facts and figures and start to give us some information. And it's not perfect. It's an imperfect tool, but it does accelerate anything that you're looking at doing. So with marketing, where it's been useful is the team don't use it to write everything and put everything out, by the way. Doesn't really work for that. But it does give you ideas like, okay, we've got company A, they mow lawns, they've got 5 guys, they're trying to book in a particular area. These are the ideas that we have. This is what we would like to do. Can you put together a scope and a strategy? And it'll give you an idea of how that strategy might look. Then you refine it. No, we don't want to do that. That won't work, or this is better. And actually very quickly, you've got a full plan for a client that you're very happy with, that you've worked out. And it just helps speed that up. So I think very, very good for that, and conceptualizing plans and ideas and giving you structure to that. Without someone having to type all that up, it then gets sent round a week later for everyone to put their comments in, and they get retyped up. You're doing it almost while you're in a meeting. You're coming out of that. It's a workshop that you can do on the fly, and it's all written up for you as you go in, and you keep giving it the prompts. You keep saying, well, this isn't right, and this isn't right. So I think it's great for that. On Rapid Fusion side of the business, as an OEM and as a product manufacturer, we have user interfaces, we have software, firmware that we're developing. So I've got 2 developers, but they're almost as many as 10 in terms of how fast they're developing product. So it's really sped up coding. We've utilized it for a lot of our software design, and actually that's a real power. Like, that didn't exist 12 months ago or 18 months ago to the point where it does now. So having that opens it up. Like, whereas a business might not be able to afford a coder, now they can actually write a piece of software for a purpose, and actually offer, you know, maybe that as a service to somebody, or be able to resell that software. So, or speed up a process within their business because everyone uses that software now. I think it's really, really valuable. It's a minefield, but I don't think it's not going to, that cat is out of the bag now. We're not going to see that go away. So if I'm not utilized, if our agency's taking 3 weeks to write a strategy that they're happy with versus 3 days, and actually the clients are getting that service from a competitor, then maybe you've got to look at how do you compete if you don't utilize it. And I think that's going to be more apparent as time goes on. You're going to see businesses who haven't jumped on that bandwagon falling back because they're not keeping up with some of these young companies that are coming through that are fully versed and use it for every system they've got. Where's it go to? I don't know. That's probably quite a big topic, Mark. I don't know what we'll end up seeing in the future. It could get quite crazy quite quickly. But yeah, for me, AI is essential tool. It's not running my business. It's not, you know, it's not taking over job roles. It's not, I'm not losing staff to it, but it is complementing and increasing our output. And that's where I see its place right now.
Okay, excellent. Well, it's traditional in the show to ask a couple of more strange questions, or whatever, but always the same question every time. So you've only got to watch an episode to figure out what they're going to be. So I'm going to ask you the first of the two. So many people will be watching this over the weekend. It's hopefully going to be a sunny weekend. So they'll be talking to people at the pub, over a barbecue, maybe back in the traditional kitchen. So what kind of thing do you like to talk to people about in the kitchen, or when you relax? So when you're not sat on in front of a computer on a Teams call, yeah, what do you talk about?
I guess probably easy to go down the route of what am I into. So outside of work, my passions are still cars, very much. Still love cars. So I was having a very in-depth conversation just the other day with a mate of mine around Audi R8s and why the engine's the same as a Lamborghini Gallardo and how tunable they are, and I geek out about all of that stuff. So cars would be definitely on that list. I do like to dabble in politics, although I'm not going to share too many views on this call. But I think you know, the economy and sort of the world pitch is quite interesting to me, and I like to get people's takes on, very comfortably, not debating and arguing, but on how they see, you know, we're in a very interesting time, right, globally. And I think it's great to you meet one or two people, some people who want to sort of not have any thoughts on it and don't want to look at it, and then others who can't be helped but to look at. And it's fascinating really how we're evolving. You know, we're seeing cryptocurrency becoming a big topic over in the States. You know, how is that going to change things? You know, the lot of the import and export stuff that's going on in terms of taxation is interesting. People are immigrating to other countries from the UK. You know, there's a whole host of conversations there. So yeah, very much I like to talk on world topics, as geeky as that might sound. And if that doesn't work, I talk about fast cars and hope that gets them. And I'm also really into boxing. So boxing is one of my true loves, really. So you can always talk about Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury and all of that sort of topics, but who I think are retiring actually at this point. But but we'll see if they ever actually fight each other. They'll probably be 50 years old at that point, and it'll be it'll still pack out a Wembley Stadium most likely. Yeah. So yeah, they're my real, like, on a personal level, they're my interests. You know, cars, boxing, and world politics. Sounds quite simple when you look at it. Really, I feel like there should be more depth to me than that. But that's maybe business takes up too much of my time to have any more interest in that. Really.
I think if we were to look back over a period of history, anyone who wants to talk about politics at this particular time in history has probably set themselves up for quite a few arguments and quite a long discussion. So I think that could occupy more than one career, let alone doing a real job. So yeah.
Definitely arguments in the kitchen. If we're having a chat about it in the kitchen, there's going to be some interesting points of view. But I love all those points of view. That's what makes that's what's been, a democracy. You want people's opinions on what's the best way. I don't have all the answers. No one does. But so yeah, interesting times.
And next question, talking of interesting times, what is your hope for 12 months' time? What do you want to achieve? What do you have planned? What is that little thing that keeps you motivated to get up? It can be business, it can be personal, whatever you want to share. What's ahead in 12 months?
I think, really thinking about this, I think where I'm at in my life personally, and business and personal life, they're really connected. Anyone who says there's a business owner, they're separate. They're just not. They're so ingrained because it's so much of your time. I think to get to a point where my aim this year has been to get back to a point where you enjoy the journey, putting the things in place that make the journey more enjoyable, because the destination is always changing. So for me now, it's like, it'll be 10 years in business. Actually, 2027 will be 10 years in business. But it's a long time. It's like, there was all these milestones that were achieved along that way that all felt like when I hit them would be the holy grail, and I'd go off into the sunset really happy. And actually those holidays didn't happen. I quickly reset on the next task and never really took the time. So I guess sort of turning a little bit older in my life and having a family that's now growing up as well. And I feel like it's about time I started to think more about the enjoyment of the journey, taking time out, but also having a business that's fun. And we are there, it's tough, very, very tough. And there's always stresses and woes. But my 12 months looks like to me going into next year with a really good settled structure and team, which we're building really quickly at the moment, but it's settling. And having more of a foothold in my personal life where I feel like I'm getting that balance, and it's starting to pay off after all these years. It takes 10 years. Anyone who tells you any different, you need a good 10 years in any business to be comfortable. And I think that's too long to wait if you can't enjoy the journey. So it's important to have that balance. So for me, on a personal level, moving, I want to relocate home. I want to have a few trips and a few bits of time off that I've been promising my partner for a long time that she'd get that I haven't done. And I'm always in the doghouse for that. But start to regain a little bit of control over that and be a lot more settled. So business wise, there's always going to be goals. There's always going to be targets to achieve. They're not as interesting as feeling settled in what you're doing and comfortable at doing it.
I think moving house, keeping your partner happy and delivering the promises you've made to her, that's probably a big enough ambition for 12 months. You don't need like a business one as well.
No, I'm not going to. No. She'll be happy, by the way. I'll make sure she sees it. She'll be really happy that I put that first over the business. So I've got some well done to that.
Excellent. So, as I move to wrap up the episode on that, how can people find out more about your businesses? So how do they find out about Rapid Fusion, Evo 3D and Evolution Media? So where do they go, and how do they contact you or follow you?
The best way to, so I'm Jake Hand on LinkedIn. There actually isn't many of us. And then there's the website. So if you go on to www.rapidfusion.co.uk, and then it's evo3d.co.uk. They're where you'll find our business. And then you've got Evo-Media for Evolution Media, if you want to learn more about the services that Evolution Media offers for marketing and media. And really, I mean, obviously, hopefully there'll be a link to me somewhere on this, maybe on this channel. I'm going to say channel. It's a channel for sure. But yeah, if you Google me, you'll find the business hopefully, and obviously reach out if anyone's got any questions or ideas or things they want to try. I haven't got all the answers, but I'm sure between me and the team we'll be able to help you, and we look forward to hearing from people. And even if it's just pick up the phone and talk over their business in terms of how we can maybe help them if they're having a particular problem at the moment in terms of marketing or whatever it might be, then reach out. Happy to help where I can.
Brilliant. before I sign off and say thanks, do you have a final sentence, question, observation, or thought that you'd like to sign off your episode with?
I think I'm going to go with enjoy the journey. SME owners, enjoy the journey.
That's a good one.
Yeah, definitely try and take time to reflect and realize what you've achieved. And not every day will be perfect, but enjoy the journey. And if you can enjoy it while you're doing it, that's the key to really having true success, I think, in any business.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Jake, for being a guest. Thanks for offering some good advice. Well done for making a big promise to your partner. We'll be checking to see if you fulfilled it. So thanks very much for coming on.
No, my pleasure. Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'll quickly wrap up with the usual words that if you'd like to get in touch with the show, with a comment, a suggestion, and particularly if you'd like to appear, then contact inquiries at MTDCNC.com or speak to myself, Stuart Whitehead, or Joe Reynolds. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. From me, Mark Weymouth at the Sensor Specialist Plus Automation. Cheers. Have fun.